Welcome back, everybody. It's time for a next edition of Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. Also heard on the radio. Hello, radio. On 101.5 KDON in Las Vegas and 840 KXNT. A big wave to my friends out in the Mojave in the county of Clark in the state of Nevada. Battleborn, baby. All right, we're back talking Raider football. The Raiders getting set to take on the Chicago Bears Sunday at Allegiant Stadium. They're currently a 1-point favorite. Yes, 1-point favorite at home. Big Bears crowd going to be on hand to challenge Raider Nation in their own building. And we're here to talk about it. I am Scott Gulbransen, your host, along with my co-host, Mr. Mo Moton. Mo's the senior NFL writer at Bleacher Report, Raiders columnist at sportsnaut.com. You can catch him and dialogue with him on x.com at Mo Moton, Moemoton. If you want to talk to me, I'm at LV Gully, and the show is SNB Today. Quick reminder, don't forget to subscribe to the show. If you're listening to us on radio, it's great you hear us once a week, but guess what? You can hear us multiple times a week by subscribing to the podcast wherever you get your audio. Don't forget, rate and review. All right, what is Raider Nation without dysfunction? Currently, two big things going on. Besides the 1-2 record, besides the drubbing in Washington and the concerns with the offensive line, the Tom Brady story and his quote-unquote conflict of interest, which I still think is a lot of crap, still out there. We'll get to that in a minute. But first, we got to start with the big story, Mo, and that is the offensive line. After the Washington game, when we saw perhaps one of the worst offensive line performances we've seen from a Raider group in years, we had, of course, press availability. Our good friend Vinny Bonsignor from the Las Vegas Review-Journal asked the right questions. Of course, he's a great journalist. Some of you might not think so. I really don't care, but he is. He asked the great question of Pete Carroll about could there be movement on the line. So I'm going to play that clip, Mo, come back and get your reaction, and let's talk about that. So here's Pete Carroll talking on Wednesday, yesterday, about the offensive line situation.
Pete, you had mentioned fitting the offensive line. I think on Monday it was. Last year, the Raiders finished with Jordan Meredith at left guard, Dylan Parham was at right guard, and Jackson was at center. Would you consider maybe going back to something like that? Is that
Absolutely
what you're
not. No, we've invested a lot of time with these guys playing in their spots. I know you're interested in JPJ. This is an official week to practice and to get ready. Last week was not that. So he's ready to compete for the playing time, and he and Alex will be going at it. So it's a good situation in that regard.
When you say competing for playing time,
Jackson didn't hit anybody in 2 weeks. We got to see what he can do. So we got to check him out and see how he does.
All right, there you go. Mo, where's the happy-go-lucky Pete Carroll, right? I'm going to get your reaction to not only the question, which was the right question, but give me your insight. Like, when you watched that clip for the first time, what came to mind?
That Pete Carroll is very irked by the Jackson Powers Johnson talk about moving to center, right? So Pete Carroll knows what's going on. He's a smart guy. He understands that last year, Jackson Powers Johnson was the center. I don't know if Raider Nation has heard it, and some of you have heard the story about Jackson Powers Johnson telling the last coaching staff, look, I'm going to play center when Andre James got hurt last year. And I believe Pete Carroll is probably aware of that story too. But these coaches, I don't want to say ego, you can call it what you want, but these coaches want to feel like and have to, have the locker room understand they're in charge. The players, you're not controlling the ship. We're steering the ship as coaches. We're going to tell you where you're going to play and when you're going to play that position. So I feel like I'm not in the locker room. I'm not there at Raider headquarters, but it feels like Pete Carroll is saying, look, he's going to play guard. We want him to play guard, and that's it. I'm glad he actually came out and said it that way because it now shuts down the conversation because that's been the talk. When is JPJ moving back to center? When is he moving back to center? Pete Carroll came in and threw ice cold water and said, it ain't happening while I'm here. He's going to play guard. But I will say, Scott, it feels a bit personal because he got a bit tense there when he answered the question, and he seemed pretty fed up with thought about JPJ moving back to center and wanted to shut it down as quick as he could.
Yes. And I was going to go there, Mo, because listen, what else could it be? And I think, Vinny put the question perfectly, which is like, hey, you had this unit last year. Here's where they played. Now, were they the best offensive line in the NFL? No. Were they the worst? No. Were they somewhere in the middle at times? Yes. Were they in the 20s at times? Yes. But clearly, last year, too, you had a rookie playing there, and you had a couple rookies playing there. And so they didn't have a lot of time to get comfortable, right? And it was a terrible year. So then they come in, and Vinny's question is, look, excuse me, it's not working right now. So would you think about going back? Now, yes, granted, it's been 3 weeks, and we talked about this in the last show. 3 weeks, not a lot of time. It's early in the season, but it's so bad, and everyone can see it. And it's the talk of the NFL. If you watch all the national shows, they're talking about how bad the Raiders' offensive line is. And Pete Carroll does not want to talk about it. As you see, he answered the question, and then he tried to move on before Vinny went back and asked about Jackson Powers Johnson again. And he's like, look, he hasn't hit anybody 2 weeks. He got very short. And again, body language is big, man. You can see from his face. And I think this is where, for those of you, especially me in my 50s now, you want to call us old people. But I understand what people are talking about with Pete Carroll now, because he is so set with this decision. He basically shut down moving anybody, except that JPJ and Alex Kappa were going to compete at right guard. And I agree. I think this is very personal. I don't know if it was because of the statement he made last year. That makes sense, I guess, in some ways. But you came in as a new head coach. Don't you have a clean slate? Forget what the guy said last year. You have the conversation and I say, hey, listen, when you're with me, I don't want you talking to the press, telling me what you're going to play. This is how it works here. Because JPJ did not make any statements going into the season past that one last year. And so to me, it's very troubling. And a lot of people have jumped to Pete Carroll's defending his son because he knows his son's taking heat and he should. But to me, it sounds very personal because there's been no other explanation. If he says, listen, I don't believe that that's his best position. He played a fine center, but we want to up-level that position, and we believe that his career is going to be as a really great guard. He hasn't said that.
I think Pete Carroll could turn the temperature down on the situation if he simply explained why.
Right.
JPJ one is going to be a guard and why they haven't even considered him. It would be one situation if JPJ lost a position battle to Jordan Meredith. Then we can understand he lost a position battle. Jordan Meredith was the better player at center. But they're not even considering Jackson Powers Johnson playing center. And they're not explaining why. Now, they don't have to explain to the media why that is. But if you don't explain the reasoning, people are going to question it because he won the Remington Trophy for best center in college football. He played the position fairly well last year. Of course, there was issues with Priest calling out per snap coverages and penalties. We get that. But just like any other player, he was a rookie and he has room for improvement. You can develop him into a better player. The other question really quick, Scott, is JPJ is not the only player struggling on that offensive line. Right. So why is he the only player that's still in an active competition for a job? Why isn't Dylan Parham competing? Dylan Parham is probably arguably your worst offensive lineman, but he is not competing. No one's threatening to get his job. DJ Glaze has struggled in pass protection at right tackle. There's no competition, no threat to his job. Why is JPJ being singled out as someone who has to continuously compete going into week 4? You're
right, Mo. Because and the other thing is, and maybe again, I'm not there. If I was there, I might have asked this question, which is, hey, Pete, this whole offensive line is struggling. Why do you think it's struggling? What's going on? Is it communications issue? Is it failure to grasp your system, your scheme, this gap? What do you think the underlying issue is? A simple question, right? A direct question about why everyone is struggling. The other thing is, I'm struck by, and this is where I agree, I think it's very, very personal. I'm struck by the fact that he doesn't talk up Jordan Meredith. He just says he's playing center. He doesn't talk about his struggles. He doesn't say, listen, we believe he's our best center, and the reason why is, and listen, outside of doing this, I've made my living in my life doing corporate messaging and communications. You have to have a narrative. You have to have a story, and you pivot. So Vinny asked the question. He doesn't want to talk about JPJ. Okay, so then talk about the other guys, to your point. But that's not a good story either. So there's an avoidance issue here along with the personal thing. And the other issue as well is when you have a young player competing in camp, doing whatever, challenging them, nothing wrong with that. I'm okay with that. Chip Kelly did it with Ashton Genty a little bit early on in camp, if you remember, and people went nuts about that. And here's the thing. Back in June, and I forgot who posted this up there, but it's from the Raiders' own internal. They have their, of course, they have like a slew of internal shows that they do at their studio in Henderson. Lincoln Kennedy was on, Eddie Pinheiro, who's now left the Raiders, but when he was there, he did this. And I want to play this clip. It's 2 minutes long, but I want to play this clip of Lincoln Kennedy talking about specifically Jackson Powers-Johnson and knowing the position you're playing and what that does mentally for an offensive lineman in the NFL.
We heard from JPJ last week, I believe, Lincoln, and he was talking about like, look, this is new for him going into year 2. He goes, and obviously the interior guys work along multiple places. But he goes like, I'm coming in as the center, right? Like I am coming in as like, there is not a confusion as to what I'm going to do for a young lineman. So to transport yourself back to kind of being in that mind space. Like obviously one of the things that the group collectively loves about Jackson is that versatility. Right. And you and I have the conversation, like you need to be able to do multiple things to be successful in the NFL.
No doubt.
But for him to be able to come in mentally, physically, understanding this is priority one, I have to imagine that it streamlines so much of what is going to be in store for him in 2025 in terms of learning a new system, figuring out the calls and the checks and where do I need to be. And we talk about the eyes, right? Like how valuable is it for him to kind of have that clarity on his role?
It's immeasurable. I mean, it's priceless, to be honest with you. The think about it, because as a player, I've often talked to guys and said, look, this game is more mental than we know. Everybody can run. That's out there. You know what I mean? Everybody, there are guys who can catch better than others, but, catch a football, run on a football field. How do you translate and process the information in order to be successful? The things that you have to do is you have to put your mind at ease and allow yourself to absorb the information. So it's a matter of how you learn, but more importantly, how you pattern yourself to be more comfortable. And for JPJ, it's an opportunity for him to say, okay, I know where I'm at. Let me learn this position. Let me make myself the best I can at this position. I'm not dancing around. I'm here center 1 week, a guard, left guard 1 week, right guard 1 week. It's all offensive line play, but it is different in many confines of the word. So my thing is that's a level of comfort that leads to a place of peace to allow you to become a better player. Because now I don't have to worry about where I'm going to play. Now I just need to worry about I need to play.
There you go. So Lincoln always is a great truth teller, and obviously the experience he has is without question. But Mo, there's no clarity for him even at guard, because the clarity he thought he had was to be center. They switch him to guard, okay, and then it's been a constant, well, he's in competition. Now, he got hurt. I understand that. So Carroll's point to that, where he pointed that out, was fine. But now he's at guard, and he has no clarity there because he's being told that, yeah, you got to compete with this guy we signed off the street that didn't make it in Cincinnati, who had one of the worst offensive lines in the league last year. I don't understand it. All it does is create more confusion.
I have two issues there, Scott. He said Jackson Powers-Johnson hadn't hit anybody 2 weeks ago. I take a look at him. Alex Kappa missed just about the entire training camp process.
Right.
Do you remember Alex Kappa had an injury, and they were talking so much about this right guard position battle, but it was mostly JPJ because Alex Kappa wasn't on the field.
Right.
Right. So Alex Kappa missed most of training camp, and so yet there's still a close competition there. JPJ was there for the most part to play, to practice. It doesn't make sense to me, Scott. And the other thing that doesn't make sense is last year, Jackson Powers-Johnson played 3 positions. He played center, he played left guard, and right guard. Of those 3 positions, you know where he took the fewest snaps? Right guard. Mm-hmm. He took a ton of snaps at center, as we know, but I believe he took the most snaps at left guard before he moved to center. And I did a Bleacher Report video on this. He played fewer than 100 snaps at right guard last year. And I say this over and over again. I believe I said it last show. Not all offensive linemen are comfortable on opposite sides of the line. Some guys are only comfortable on the left side. Some guys are only comfortable on the right side. To Lincoln Kennedy's point, You're moving a guy to 3 different positions last year. Now you're playing him at the position he played least this year of the 3 he played last year. And then he's in competition going into week 4. You want to talk about being uncomfortable, unsettled at your position on the offensive line? Jackson Powers-Johnson has a reason to say, hey, man, I didn't play that position much last year on the right side. And then I'm in competition with a guy who missed most of training camp. I mean, there's got to be something more here. Now, the only thing I will say is Jackson Powers-Johnson has suffered a number of concussions going back to his collegiate time at Oregon, concussions and injuries. If you remember his rookie year, he missed a lot of the offseason because of injury. He was out again in the previous outing because of a concussion. He was in concussion protocol. Pete Carroll said we wanted to hold him out because we wanted to make sure he was ready to go. Whatever, we wanted to hold the continuity. He gave some excuse why they didn't have Jackson Powers-Johnson out there, but point stands. He's had a lot of injury issues. Now, if you're saying you're protecting him from injury, playing the position, the offensive line, whether you're playing guard or you're playing center or right tackle, is a physical position. You're going against 300-plus pound men on every play. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get banged up. So if they don't think injury-wise he's fit to play center, then he's not fit to play guard either because it's just as physical as a position. So I don't want to hear the injury excuse. So Pete Carroll clearly bothered. They're giving a lot of excuses why Jackson Powers-Johnson is the only one under the microscope among their struggling offensive line unit. Something's going on there, and I said this on Twitter, Scott, and I'll say it on the show. Jackson Powers-Johnson is not going to finish his rookie contract with the Raiders. They're going to wind up trading him or cutting him before that 4th year comes up, and we'll be moving on watching JPJ playing for another football team and probably be playing center.
Yeah, no, that's a bold prediction. We got it. We marked it. But yeah, you're right. There's something stinks here. Something just stinks. And it makes Pete Carroll look bad. It just does. And I was an advocate for Pete Carroll, guy coming in, the right kind of bridge coach, if you want to call it that, for a few years. I'm not so sure anymore. And I think the NFL is looking at it too and saying, what the hell is going on in Vegas? What is Pete Carroll doing? You brought up too, Pete Carroll struggling with offensive lines throughout his entire NFL career as a head coach in Seattle. They won with defense there a lot. And so maybe there's part of the track record here that deserves a little more attention. Mo, before we go to the break, this Tom Brady thing with having the headset on, this thing just will not die. The league has already cleared him and said, no, we allowed him to do that. But I'm seeing column after column, and now Brady struck back yesterday saying, people are just ethically challenged and they're just trying to challenge him on it. And you got people from teams, including Ben Johnson, who met with him, who he's playing this week, who said, we don't give away trade secrets in those meetings. There's nothing that's going to give anybody an advantage. Real quick, in about 30 seconds, what's your take on this? And is it ever going to die down?
It's never going to die down as long as Tom Brady is talking to other teams, no matter what capacity it's in. Coaches aren't stupid. They know Tom Brady is associated with the Raiders, a consultant,
Right.
if you want to call it. They know that. They're not going to tell him anything anyway. So this is a nothing burger for me.
I agree, but it continues to get column inches, as we said back in the newspaper business. Now it's screen inches, I guess. And a lot of good people, a lot of good journalists are writing about it and making a big deal out of it. So we'll see. All right, we're going to step aside for our first break. When we come back, Dan Weiderer from The Athletic. He covers the Bears. He also hosts the Take the North podcast, the Bears podcast here on the Odyssey Network. We're going to talk to him about the Chicago Bears, the Raiders competition coming up on Sundays. They try to get to 500 on the season. You're listening to Silver and Black today with Mo and Scott. We're coming back right after this. All right, Raider Nation, I want to tell you real quick about our friends at Sleeper Picks. Of course, title sponsor of our videos this year for Silver and Black today. Tonight, we got a game, of course, the Cardinals and the Seahawks. And Sleeper Picks, if you want to play daily fantasy football, win some money, that's where you do it. There's nobody better, the best available opportunities to bet on players and situations in this game tonight. By the way, you get a $100 deposit match. Spit it out. Yes. $100 deposit match from Sleeper Picks and from us here at Silver and Black today by using the code GENTY. That's right. Go get the app. It's the best app you're ever going to use for daily fantasy football. Go get the app. When you sign up, use the code GENTY, you get a $100 match on your first $100 deposit. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to jump in and show you my picks up on the screen tonight. Kyler Murray, 30.5 rushing yards. No, I'm going to say 25 plus right there, okay? So we got Kyler Murray, 25 plus yards is my pick. Jackson Smith and Jigba, of course, the Ohio State product. Will he go over 80.5 yards? I say not. I think 60 is more realistic. The crowd is also betting there, I should say. So I'm going to go with them. The other person I'm looking at is Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold is going to have a good night against that Arizona defense, which has played better, surprisingly. But I think if you look at the numbers, you're going to go with Sam Darnold over 200 plus yards. And you put $20 bet on this puppy, you're going to win 40-40 playing daily fantasy football with Sleeper Picks. Now, fantasy football, of course, we play it on Sleeper as well, but Sleeper Picks, use the code GENTY. That's GENTY as in Ashton Genty for a $100 match on your first $100 deposit from your friends at Sleeper Picks and us here at Silver and Black today. Enjoy the game tonight and good luck. 1. Welcome back, Silver and Black today, 101.5 KDON in Las Vegas, as well as 840 KXNT, as well as Odyssey on the Sports Network there. Podcast-wise, we're talking Chicago Bears. Of course, the Raiders taking on the Bears 1 p.m. Sunday at Allegiant Stadium in need of something. We'll see what that is. The Bears coming off a big win against the Dallas Cowboys. And joining us is Dan Weiderer. He writes about the Bears for The Athletic, of course, and he is one of the hosts of Take the North, the Bears podcast here on the Odyssey Network. All right, Dan, Caleb Williams, I'm going to start there with you because a lot of people start to think that he's maybe turning a corner after what we saw in Dallas. Of course, Dallas's pass defense, not very good. Is it fool's gold right now? Where is Caleb Williams, and how big of a game is it against the Raiders for him to kind of show that he's turned that corner?
Look, I've been in Chicago long enough to know there's a lot of corners that appeared to be turned that weren't ever really turned. You know, we can go back through the Justin Fields era. We can go back through the Mitch Trubisky era. We can go back into the Jay Cutler era. There's always hope here. And then eventually what appears to be a corner turn, it has a bus waiting at full speed around the bend that usually takes these quarterbacks out. You guys have been around the league long enough to know that the importance in this position is stacking performances together, consistency, understanding how to play clean. And so Caleb's got to back up what he did Sunday against Dallas with a really good effort Sunday against the Raiders. He's got to back that up with another good performance against the Commanders after the bye. He's got to back that up with a good performance against the Saints beyond that. And then we can start to talk about the significance of a potential breakthrough. What we saw Sunday was a quarterback that was in total control. And I'm glad you brought up the context of the Dallas defense. They are vulnerable right now. They were literally just allowing wide open plays left and right. If you look at Caleb's 4 touchdown plays, they are all to open receivers. Some of that's scheme, some of that's defense, some of that's the quarterback making a play. But over time, you've got to take harder tests and you've got to pass harder tests. And so I think this is a really fun one on Sunday. And challenge you in a different way. And hopefully we'll see something from Caleb that allows us to start entertaining bigger conversations.
So then you're out there and you're close to everything, obviously. How is Caleb Williams taken to the coaching staff, and particularly Ben Johnson's coaching? Because there was a lot made in the offseason about Caleb Johnson and taking in the coaching and being able to develop. And how is he taking in that new coach coming in and a coach who's been established in Detroit and he's pretty familiar with? He seemed pretty excited about the hire. What is the temperature with that relationship right now?
It's the grand experiment of 2025 in trying to determine whether these two can get this type of, play caller quarterback synergy that's required in this league. And Ben is a very, very intense perfectionist who demands that details be handled properly. And if they're not, he's going to make you do it again. And if they're not, he's going to get on your butt, and he's going to do it repeatedly and insistently until the things that he wants out of his offense are being done the right way. The thing that Ben brought in with him is credibility. All you had to do was put on the tape of the 2024 Lions and say, this is why I am the way I am, because it gets results. And these are the results that Detroit had offensively with me calling the plays and me, coaching those guys in this way. Caleb seems to have leaned into this over time and understanding that his own preparation habits had to intensify, that his own sort of work approach in order to be able to handle all the volume and the demands of what Ben Johnson demands. we are 3 games into this thing right now. They seem to be making progress. We know it's not going to be linear from here to the top of the mountain that they're trying to get to. But they do seem to be connected right now in a way that's bringing out improvement. And that's what the season's all about. It's, can you bring out enough improvement from Caleb Williams to show signs of legitimate direction? And we'll know a lot more about all of this when we get into December. We've seen some positive growth, and I think that can continue.
Now, we talked about Caleb Williams kind of sustaining that momentum, but Coach Johnson's talked about this kind of stacking goal. He's talked a lot about finding that championship groove in practice, and I think he kind of turned a couple heads when he said that. It's like, well, why aren't they doing what? You're the one who sets up the practices. Why is that momentum not there? But given that this Raider game on Sunday is important to kind of see that they've turned that corner as a team and that reset and refocus that you've talked about in the past, how important is the city of Chicago, and is that team looking at this game in Las Vegas?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a bunch of measuring stick games throughout the year. This is your test of being able to respond to a positive performance. They responded from a very, very poor performance in Detroit the previous week by getting back to work, locking in, doing what Ben Johnson asked of them, which was to practice with a very heightened level of concentration and focus in order to bring out the results on Sunday against Dallas. Now you've got to celebrate that win, hug it, pull it in tight, and then reset and get back to work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week to bring out a similar effort against the Raiders. It's just important to note that when Ben made those comments last week about his team not practicing with a championship standard, it was coming off a 31-point loss in Detroit that was thoroughly embarrassing. And Ben was as embarrassed as anyone because that's where he used to coach. And they kicked him, and they kicked him when he was down, and then they kicked dirt in his face when he was down after that. And so there was an urgency to last week, and the Bears responded to that urgency. Well, there's another sort of new kind of urgency this week that they have to respond to, and we'll see what they get done again against a football team. You see the odds. It's a pick 'em game, and the line is shifted both ways throughout the week. Anything can happen, and so it's about the team that's sharper, more mistake free, and that team will probably walk out of Allegiant Stadium on Sunday night with a win.
So one of the staples for Ben Johnson's offense in Detroit was the run game, and right now you have DeAndre Swift, Kyle Monangai, rookie coming in, Roschon Johnson. What does the backfield look like? It's not what we're seeing, what we saw from Detroit. Obviously, it's still early, so it's time to develop that unit. But how is the backfield shaking out? How is the ground game going? And what can Ben Johnson do to get it going?
Yeah, I think that's a priority this week, is trying to seek some more answers, and talking to folks inside the building. It feels like it's sort of all encompassing, that they're still getting a chemistry up front with an offensive line that was drastically overhauled during the offseason, particularly in the interior. They're trying to get DeAndre Swift to understand this particular running scheme and where specific plays are designed to go, and making sure that they go there. And if it's not there the way it was designed, just be okay taking 2 yards instead of 10, and not trying to make a big play happen where you then take a big loss. And so it's going to be a work in progress for a little while, I think, as they try to find what their ideal identity is in the running game. I thought DeAndre Swift was better than the reviews were in Detroit in week 2. I don't think he was as good against Dallas in week 3. And so you're trying to find that healthy reliability from your backfield and your top back that gives you a little bit of that juice against the Raiders. You guys know, like, if you can get that running game established, now Ben leans into play action as well as anyone in the league. He sets Caleb up for opportunities that allow him to be a shot taker and a playmaker. And so the faster you get that running game to click, the more openings there will be to get your offense to the next level. And so I think Sunday's a fascinating test.
Let's switch to the defensive side of the ball for the Bears, Dan, and we look at the Raiders' offensive front. We've spent most of our show previous to you coming on talking about what a dumpster fire it is. The right side is a joke. We're having Pete Carroll's getting testy already. It's week 3. I mean, you've been to many, many press conferences. It's week 3, and the coach is already losing his crap. So you look at that situation and the trouble the Bears have had up front, but how big of a game is this, and how crucial will Montez Sweat be to kind of show that, hey, we can be successful up front and be able to get into that, collapse that pocket, and create something up front for this Bears team? There's
no tension like September tension, right? It sounds like you guys are
big time.
That out in Vegas, where it's like, wow, this is look like these are teams that are looking for answers. And I'd certainly be curious in getting more of your insight into how vulnerable that line is up front, because it seems like they haven't been able to establish a running game, and particularly at the right tackle position, that there's opportunities to get after a quarterback from that side. And so the Bears have to find that. They have to find the vulnerability in this Raiders offense and the offensive line and attack. Montez Sweat is very highly paid. And with the paycheck that he brings in, expectations are high on a weekly basis. They're high on a quarterly basis. People want to see you impact the game at least once a quarter in a significant way. It doesn't always have to be a sack, but there has to be some disruption. There has to be some chaos in the backfield. And so he was able to get his first sack of the season on Sunday against Dallas and Dak Prescott. I imagine he's going to be on the hunt for Geno Smith on Sunday. But the Bears haven't been consistent with their pass rush, and it only really got going on Sunday when they had a lead and they were able to play the game on their terms. And when you get that lead from a 1-score lead to a 2-score lead to a 3-score lead, now all of a sudden you can do everything that you want on your terms, and you can dictate the terms of the game. And they were able to do that. The pressure came behind the pressure, the turnovers came, and you got that faucet going the way that defensive coordinators like to get that faucet going. It's going to be a different challenge against the Raiders on Sunday. And so Dennis Allen, you guys know him well as a former Raiders coach. He's going to have to come up with a winning game plan this week that allows the Bears to use their strengths against the Raiders' weaknesses.
Dan, I have a sneaky suspicion this could be a high-scoring game with the two defenses that are going to be on the field on Sunday. I just want to wrap this up with asking about how the Bears handling the absence of Jalen Johnson, two-time Pro Bowl cornerback. How are they handling that in the secondary, and who are the Raiders going to see matched up on the outside with Trey Tucker, who's having a pretty strong start to his career this season?
There's no good news to the loss of a Pro Bowl cornerback, and Jalen's absence has been felt without question. The small sort of footnote on this is that he wasn't around a lot during the offseason program for OTAs or minicamp. He wasn't around at all during training camp. And so they haven't had to sort of drastically adjust. They've been dealing with this for months now. And they've had Tyreek Stevenson, who hasn't had the greatest start to his season, particularly in that game against Detroit where they gave up 50 points. He was very vulnerable in man coverage, and the Lions picked him apart. Nashawn Wright on the opposite side is a guy that is trying to have an emergence. Had a big pick six on Monday Night Football in week 1. And that length and that ability to play press man coverage that Dennis Allen loves. You've just got to kind of adapt in real time. They've also been without Kyler Gordon, their standout slot corner since the season began. TJ Edwards, their linebacker in the middle, is out still with his own soft tissue injury. And so they've been trying to kind of hold this thing together with chicken wire and bubble gum for a few weeks as they're simultaneously trying to figure out who they are as a defense. And so that's a challenge for Dennis Allen. I liked what they did game plan wise against Dallas. They benefited certainly from CeeDee Lamb leaving that game very early in the first half and not being able to return. But Dennis Allen made some concessions. It was, we are going to take away the deep ball, and we're going to keep a top on this defense, and we're going to let you hurt us with the run, with the understanding that if we can get out of this game giving up 14 points, which they did, we'll feel really good about it. And so now you've got a different challenge this week. It's not just Trey Tucker. You've got Brock Bowers, who's a weapon that you've got to cover. Jacoby Myers, always a threat to handle. And then I'd be curious to hear from you, because there was a lot of interest in Chicago about Ashton Jeanty going into the draft, why he hasn't quite got unlocked the way everyone thought he might early in his rookie season.
Yeah, and it's really the answer for that one, Dan, is the offensive line. He's got, Mo mentioned it early in our show, 101% of his yards are after contact. It's a mind-blowing stat. It's incredible. Now, before we let you go, Dan, I have a really important thing. I'm originally a Chicago boy. I'm from Park Ridge, northwest suburbs. Okay.
I grew up
did
in
you?
Park Ridge.
Okay, nice.
At 10 years old, we moved to Park Ridge. Are you Maine South High School?
I wasn't.
alum?
I was gone before that. We left when I was 10.
Okay.
So, but my cousins went there. So, but they're older than you are.
Got it.
So, but Chicago, the one thing that Mo continually tries to convince the public is that ketchup belongs on a hot dog. Could you please correct him on the proper way to have a hot dog?
I'm not a person that won't be done here. It won't be done in this household. It won't be done in my neighborhood. It won't be done here in the city. But I have no problems if you feel like you want to have ketchup on your hot dog. Just don't do it when you're over in my backyard having a hot dog in my backyard.
Listen, I in my refrigerator right now, I have sport peppers. I have the right green relish. I got the pickles. I celery salt. You name it, baby. So we'll get Mo there one day. But Dan Weiderer covers the Bears.
And listen, the relish has got to be neon
course.
green, like it be as neon as the signs on the Vegas Strip. That's how.
100%. If you want to read more about the Bears leading up to this game, check out Dan's work up on The Athletic, and you can follow him on X at Dan Weiderer. We certainly appreciate you being with us, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to step aside here on Silver and Black today. When we come back, your phone calls. Welcome back, Silver and Black today, the final segment, home stretch as I call it, here on the show. If you're listening to us on the radio, 101.5 KDON, and of course, 840 KXNT. Moton, Scott Gulbransen back with you talking Raiders football. Thanks to Dan Weiderer for giving us that run through on the Bears, where they're at. They got a lot of issues too. New head coach, still Caleb Williams, not convinced there. Nobody's really convinced. He put a good performance against the Cowboys, as we talked about, but we'll see what happens as he heads into the friendly confines of, or the unfriendly confines, depending how you look at it, of Allegiant Stadium Sunday in Las Vegas. Now is the time, Mo, we're going to get to calls. You can imagine what the calls are going to be about today. Maybe the defensive line? No. Offensive line. You could be part of the show, by the way. If you want to call in, no guarantee your call gets on because we're getting so many calls, and I'm trying to get people on, especially if they haven't been on in a while or they haven't been on before. So keep calling. Just keep calling. Give me your take. The more succinct you are, the more to the point you are, the better chance you have to get on. That's right. 702-900-7869, 702-900-7869. We have an old friend who's called in, Mo. Somebody I love to hear from. And here she comes. Michelle, East Bay.
Hello, Scott and Mo. It's Michelle in the East Bay. It's been a while. I still listen, but I try to only call when I really have something I want to say or a helpful question. But I guess it's that time. So the Jackson Powers Johnson situation. Mo, I said that I know that you said that you didn't want to speculate. So I will offer my speculation. I think it's very clearly more of a disciplinary or personality type situation. I don't think it's a question of his playing ability. And my best guess is that it probably left a bad taste in the coaching staff's mouth when Max Crosby had JPJ on his podcast over the summer. I think it was just before training camp. And I remember being a little bit surprised by how candid he was in his interview, and particularly the story that he told about how he marched up to then head coach Antonio Pierce and basically told him, I'm playing center. So it feels like this coaching staff wants to set the precedent that that's not going to fly with them and that he needs to earn his reps wherever they're going to be. Now, how long they want to continue to hold that, maybe to the detriment of the team, that's another question. But that's just something that really stuck with me, and I feel like is the only thing that it can explain their kind of outright refusal to do anything about this offensive line. So we shall see. Another week, hopefully a better one. Take care.
Wow, Michelle. I'll tell you what, not just because we kind of said that in the first segment, but she's absolutely right. And the point she made, to the detriment of the team, how far do you want to punish this guy if that's what it's about? Also, what I was going to say, because she talked about the Max Crosby podcast. A lot of times, as Mo and I will tell you, NFL teams are very tight with allowing their players to talk to media because they don't have to anymore. They have their own media. Mm-hmm. But Jackson Powers Johnson goes on another player's podcast and maybe is a little too open. So they think the dangers in guys like us or Vinny or any of the reporters who cover the Raiders asking tough questions, when in reality, it's not the tough questions. It's the really low-key, relaxed situation with your teammate where this stuff can come up. But Mo, I think, Michelle is dead on. And Michelle's very smart. Whenever she calls in, she's right. She calls in when she really has something to say. The fact that she's noticed it, everybody notices it. And the fact that Pete Carroll bristles when you talk about it and just dismiss the fact that, no, he's not going back to center. Wow. The dysfunction already at 3 weeks is difficult to comprehend.
And she brought up the exact story that I mentioned in the first segment, and that was a story where Jackson Powers Johnson basically told the coach staff, "This is where I'm going to play." And if you've been in athletics, even if you haven't played a sport before, you know that the people in charge, when it comes to coaches, they want to let you know that they're in charge. They are going to let you know they are calling the shots, not you. And when you're coming in, especially as a new coach, I know Pete Carroll is 74 and he's done this, done that. But you want to come in and establish your authority and let these players know you got to buy into what we're selling you. We're not going to bend at the whim of what you want or what you claim that you are better at, or this is the position you're going to play. No, you're going to buy into our program. This is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And I think I agree with Michelle. I think that's what's going on here. Now, again, you want to have a fine line, because if Jackson Powers Johnson is your best center on the roster and it can help your offensive line and keep your quarterback from getting crushed and opening up lanes for your running back, you might want to consider it at some point, saying, hey, this is what we're going to do, but we'll leave the door open for that. The fact that Pete Carroll just absolutely, he said, I quote, absolutely not.
Right.
Lets you know that they are not even considering it.
Slam the door shut.
That is troubling to me, because, again, if he is your best center, you might want to have your best center on the field.
Yeah, and I told Murph after the game last Sunday that what my preference would have been, and again, I'm not a coach, not been an NFL coach, clearly, but I would have loved Pete Carroll's message to be, look, things got to get better, and until things get better, the whole line is competing with one another.
Right.
Everybody's job is open. They have to earn it this week. That would have shut down so many questions. And the conspiracy theories, or not even conspiracy theories, but the talk, the chatter about what the hell is going on. So, Michelle, great call. All right, now we're gonna maybe we'll get some level, peaceful, because we're going to Pastor Mike behind bars. He's a man of faith, so maybe he'll bring it down a little bit, or he may ratchet it up. We'll see.
Scott, Mo, Pastor Mike behind bars. Okay, I'm riled up today, man. After the press conference, and Pete Carroll was asked by Vinny Bonsignor, would they go back to JPJ being at center, back to the old? He said, absolutely not. That's all I need to hear. And the more I listen to that, and the more I see that, the more pissed off I get. It's like you're not even going to take it into consideration. I know I'm a fan. I know he's the pro. He's making millions. But even him competing for playing time against Kappa is ridiculous. I mean, I've never been this riled up about a coach this early in the season. But man, I tell you what, guys, I'm just pissed off, man. I don't think that Pete Carroll is thinking right. But again, he makes millions of dollars. I make nothing. I'm just a fan. So I wanted to call and just kind of vent about that. And I'm hoping, things start to work out, things, begin to click. And man, I tell you what, Mo, you mentioned him trading JPJ. That would it'd almost be the straw that broke the camel's back on this 50-year Raider fan. I don't know if I can handle much more. But anyway, and the other thing is, this week and every week from here on out, I'm starting Trey Tucker. That's it. Raiders.
There's Pastor Mike. No calmness there. No preaching peace. He was angry. And Pastor Mike, say a quick Our Father. But no, listen. If they go out against the Bears this week, Mo, and we see a performance even near as bad as we saw in Washington, this is really, if Pete Carroll doesn't like taking questions now, it's going to get hellfire out there.
I knew Pastor Mike was going to ratchet up the temperature, because I saw a lot of his posts on Twitter. He was not happy. He was fired up on Twitter on Wednesday, so I knew what we were going to get on that call. But I mean, it's within 24 hours, Scott. It feels like Raider fans were very, concerned about getting smacked twice back-to-back by double-digit points. You get embarrassed on Monday Night Football. You lose by 17 to the Washington Commanders with a backup quarterback. We've gone from a fan base that's mostly been concerned to a fan base that's now up to the anger stage.
Already.
Murph had a very good post about the 7 stages of Raider fandom. And then I think he was at the third or fourth stage. We need to check back in on Murph and ask him what stage is he in, because there's a lot of, after the JPJ soundbite on Wednesday, there is a lot of anger within Raider Nation about Pete Carroll being, just too set in his ways, trying to settle a personal score with JPJ as Michelle said, to the detriment of the team potentially. And that's angered a lot of people, because a lot of people had a lot of faith in this team and specifically this offense. There you go.
Seven stages
shot.
for those of you watching.
Anger.
7 stages of Raider season: shock, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, testing, acceptance. And Murph highlighted the anger and put the Raider logo there.
There it is.
So there it is, right? It's right there. Shout out to our buddy Murph, of course.
Shout out to Murph.
Yeah, because he's already there, and he always has a great way of putting it into context. But yeah, I mean, again, if it doesn't go well against the Bears, it's going to get really, really ugly. All right, we're going to go back to the East Bay. Anders up in Oakland.
Hey guys, it's Anders from Oakland. Just a few questions for you guys. Is this team like an elementary school? Like, are they putting guys like in the naughty corner? Genty sits out like 6 or 8 snaps to make some sort of a point because he took a wrong direction. JPJ sits because they clearly just don't like him. He introduced himself as the center, and that rubbed these old school guys the wrong way. Yet, like Nepo baby, he gets his job and he gets to keep it despite like the disaster that he is. We have a defensive head coach who clearly knows nothing about offensive line coaching, player evaluation, or play. And what does he do? He hires the most inexperienced offensive line coach in the league. And then he does that. Everybody criticizes it, including Mo. And the kid goes on, and he knows he has to prove everyone wrong. So he decides to blow up an offensive line that was doing just fine the second half of last year to show what a genius he is. And now we're stuck with this. I'm totally fine with Carroll hiring, like a defensive line, young defensive back coach. Fine. That's his area of expertise. But hiring this underqualified Nepo kid to coach is it's criminal. And I have no patience for it. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Wow. Yeah. And like he said earlier, absolutely not. JPJ's not going back to center. If you think Brendan Carroll is going to get fired during the season, you're sadly mistaken. Now, I could see him moving on after the year is over if something if it didn't get better and it's just a disaster all the way through, because then he can save some face, because he can, I'm sure, help him get another job and he goes somewhere else. But Mo, he brings up the great point. Most inexperienced offensive line coach, unproven, and that was the area of most need and work that needed to be done on this roster.
The Raiders, again, right vision, wrong moves to make.
Right.
So John Spytag comes in the offseason. He says he wants to, basically, I'm paraphrasing for him, but he said he wants to build through the trenches. Remember, he said he was going to copy the Eagles blueprint. So that means heavy with the offensive and defensive lines. You got Rob Leonard on the defensive side of the ball. Fine. He's been with the Raiders, does a great job with the defensive line. But then, as Anders said, you bring in an inexperienced pro offensive line coach in Brendan Carroll, who was an assistant in Seattle. He's Pete Carroll's son. You have Joe Philbin on the staff, but he's a senior assistant. But Brendan Carroll, by the way, not only is Brendan Carroll the offensive line coach, he's the run game coordinator.
Run game too. Yeah, people forget that. Thank you.
People forget that. So what are the 2 worst areas of this football team right now, Scott? I think it's the offensive line. It's the run game, with Ashton Jeanty averaging 3.1 yards per carry. By the way, this stat blew my mind. 101% of his yards are after contact. I'm going to repeat that. 101% of Ashton Jeanty's yards are after contact. Look it up online. It's there for you to see it. So you have Brendan Carroll, who is coaching the 2 positions that are performing the worst on the football team by a mile.
Yep.
If you look at any statistical chart, graph data, and anything, you look at anything. Offensive line, poor. Run game, poor. And Pete Carroll's son is at the center of it. But yet we're talking about JPJ competing at right guard with Alex Cappa. We're going to have no conversation about the coaching staff developing to develop these players or to get the most out of these young guys who are obviously talented.
Just brutal. It's personal. It's got to be. All right. Going to close out the show now with our buddy Tarek in Chicago. Here's Tarek.
Calling you guys from Chicago. Just want to talk about the most recent game. This is a bad look for Pete Carroll, you guys. We're sitting at 1-2. We've regressed big time in the last couple of weeks. It feels like we're 1-6. And, with your son being the offensive line coach, as well as the run game coordinator,
Bingo,
Brendan Carroll. I mean, you called it, Mo, several months back. You had concerns about this guy's ability to be the offensive line coach. And it's been an absolute complete disaster. We simply don't have the talent on the offensive line, and we honestly don't even have any type of depth. So this is going to be a lingering big-time problem throughout the course of the season. It's very, very concerning. Geno Smith was running for his life, but I feel bad for Ashton Genty because we really, truly, you see flashes of what he can be, but the guy's getting hit in the backfield the moment he touches the ball more often than not. Jack Besh, our second-round pick, 2 catches, 34 yards through 3 football games. I mean, clearly, it's not a sexy pick, but clearly in hindsight, we should have taken an offensive lineman in the first round and possibly a second, maybe in the second round as well, and then address the running back position because we've had the free agency period, the draft, mini camps, training camp, and preseason to figure out our offensive line. And Pete Carroll's known for trying to run the football. So you got a gem back there, a potential gem in Genty. You can't do anything. And you can kind of see morale going out the window with even the players. I'm picking up on some of Genty's like demeanor and body language. Max Crosby looks like he's taken a couple steps backwards, but I'll be at a Buffalo Wild Wings this Sunday with a bunch of Bear friends of mine. They're all talking smack, you guys, and I can't even talk smack back because I have no faith in the current Raiders, and there's no reason to believe these problems are going to be rectified. Hopefully we make some adjustments, like Jackson Towers-Johnson clearly will be back in the lineup. I think it's going to be right guard as well. I don't think we're going to see him at center, but I'm taking the Bears 34-20 with Caleb Williams coming into town, Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, and Ben Johnson running that offense. Speaking of offense, I mean, Chip Kelly, at this point, not as advertised, the highest paid offensive coordinator in the league. And where are the adjustments? And more importantly, where's the coordination between him and Brendan Carroll? If Pete Carroll doesn't make any major changes regarding his son, again, it's just a bad look. Looks like nepotism. Looking forward to your guys' next show. Talk to you guys later. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Well said, Tarek. Of course, from Chicago, we appreciate the call. The common denominator, all this, even with the Chip Kelly criticism, is Brendan Carroll. Because you can't run an offense, you can't pass the ball, run the ball, no matter what you call up, if you can't block up front.
The offensive line, I'll say this again, is the foundation of your offense. And if you can't run block, you can't open lanes for your running back, if you can't protect your quarterback, there's only so much you can do, and you have to work around that unit. And offensive lines should be the first priority. When Jim Harbaugh, I know this is the Chargers, what they did, but when Jim Harbaugh came to Los Angeles to coach the Chargers, what is the first thing that he did? He drafted Joe Alt. I remember that draft when people thought, oh, they're going to take Malik Neighbors. Justin Herbert needs someone to throw to. They took Joe Alt. And then even in hindsight, it worked out because Rashawn Slater goes down with the torn patella tendon. Joe Alt slides over to left tackle. That team is still operating at a high level. Ben Johnson took the job in Chicago. We don't know how that's going to end up yet. Ben Johnson, the Bears may go 5-12. But you know what he did when he first got there? You know what the Bears did when they hired Ben Johnson? They addressed the interior of the offensive line. They acquired an all-pro guard in Joe Tooney from the Kansas City Chiefs. They acquired Jonah Jackson, who played under Ben Johnson in Detroit. And then they signed a big-time center who played in Atlanta as a starter. They addressed their offensive line. What did John Spytek do? We'll leave it alone. We'll add some depth. We'll add Alex Kappa, who's coming off his worst year as a pro. We'll add Alex Kappa. And we're bringing Stone Forsythe, who struggles in pass protection, but he knows Pete Carroll from Seattle. That'll work out.
Yeah.
And then we'll play JPJ at the position he played the least in last year. And we'll have Dylan Palm flip to the left side, even though he was better as a right guard last year. We'll play Jordan Meredith at center, even though he's barely ever played center in his career. So we'll play Jordan Meredith at center and we'll work it out there. Sounds like a good plan, right, Scott? Absolutely not. And Pete Carroll's words and voice, absolutely not. The
Yes.
Raiders need to change this, and they need to change it ASAP.
Right. Absolutely. Again, thank you to our callers. Mo, we got about 15 seconds left. I'm taking the Bears to beat the Raiders 17-13. What do you got?
Bears win 27-24. It's going to be a high-scoring game. Both defenses very questionable. I think you're going to see a lot of points scored here at Allegiant Stadium. You're going to get a little bit of indoor Geno, but the Bears pull it out at the end.
All right. There you go. Our predictions, whether you like them or not, that's what they are. All right. For our good friend, our producer, Mike Robier, and for Mo Moton, I'm Scott Gulbransen. This has been Silver and Black Today. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And for our radio audience, we will see you next week. Enjoy the game, everybody. Have a great weekend.